Hey Jermaine, Andrew, coming back. Today I'm going to be talking about my D&D 3.5 house rules. I've had a lot of people, since I've been making videos on YouTube, ask me specifically, how do I adjudicate house rules? How should they be used? Well, it's very important to understand, first of all, know your system before you go monkeying around with it. You do not know the kind of damage you can do to your game by taking even one rule out. Like Jenga, like pull something and everything else collapses because the rules are largely interlocked in many systems amongst each other, and when you pull one of them out, you completely mess everything up. That being said, once you learn them, man, feel free to monkey around with them. All you're going to do is find out, well, boy, I kind of messed up there, I don't like that. You just got to think about it, because when you do that, the bad side is you don't know what you're doing. You could total party kill your guys in a way that is no way really deserved. You can make things way too easy for them. You can have made it so that something happens to the characters in a way you don't like. Also, for this video, for house rules, way back in my videos I did one on how I handle experience points in D&D. I do not use their system. It's terrible. Do not use their system. So check that video out. It's ripe with really good ideas. Also, the video, it should be right under this one, is how I do character creation in terms of stats. I do use a point system that is different than the other point systems put together, and I use it with caps as well. I'm going to have to loosely sort of refer to that in a few ways, but both of those videos, you can check those out to have some more information on here on my D&D 3.5 house rules. I think these rules are very, very good that I put together. Every single person in my gaming group uses them. Uses the experience table I use, uses the stat points I use. Sometimes they'll monkey with it a little bit. They might add one or subtract one or give you an extra one at this level, or there's something in there that is just slightly different. They might add a different experience category or subtract one, or handle things just a wee bit different, or add one or two additional house rules. But pretty much down the line, the guys that I gamed with, and lots of people that, when I get into a new group, I say, well, yeah, I mean, this is cool, but you guys ever try, think about this, and this? I'm like, ooh, I like those ideas. So I figured I'd share them with you guys. Maybe some of you will find a few bits in here that you can use. They could be beneficial. Make your game perhaps a bit more entertaining, or make a bit more sense. First of all, let me kind of lay this out. And actually, I have notes here for you guys. Did a little work for this one. The Player's Handbook, I tried to lay this out sort of the way the Player's Handbook lays it out. And I've already talked about stats in the previous video, so I'm going to talk about races now. One of the primary things I like to do with races is, first of all, I've eliminated all favorite class, knowing it's a favorite class. You can also watch my video on multi-classing, which kind of ties into D&D house rules. I will allow you to multi-class as much as you want. If you want to take a, level of every single base class out of the book, and every complete warrior, complete wizard, whatever classes, your levels, their experience, do whatever you want with them. As long as it makes sense. It can't be like, yeah, now I'm going to learn a wizard. How? How did you learn a wizard now? If you work with me and talk to me, we can work it into the game. We can make it make sense. We can make it cool. But it's like I said, as long as things make sense, as long as it doesn't damage the credibility of the game, I'm pretty cool with whatever. As long as you're not completely stepping in the spotlight of someone else. And there's a lot of ways you can do things without doing that. But additionally, some of the races have skills attached to them. A half-elf, for example, gets a +1 bonus to spot and listen. A half-elf, however, still has the same trouble as anyone else learning to listen better. Doesn't really make a whole great deal of sense to me. There's an argument there. Not saying I don't see it or understand it, but I don't care for it. I prefer the idea that a half-elf can train himself more easily to take advantage of that keen sense into this. Just saying that all these skills that you have as a racial bonus to, you have that skill on your class skill list for any class you take ever. So a half-elf would have listen, a +1 bonus to listen, or the bonuses they have to listen and spot, and I think it's diplomacy and gather information, and there might even be a search bonus. They would have all those skills added to their classes forever. this also helps half-elves a lot because half-elves are an underpowered race, and I've just taken away one of their few advantages, the fact that they can have, and any class is their favorite class. So they don't get that because there's no favorite class. Also, I sort of use the old school comeliness rules to a degree. Well, I use old school comeliness modifiers against your charisma, sort of determining your attractiveness. To say, so a half-elf would, for appearance sake, be whatever their charisma is plus 1. So let's just say a half-elf is a little bit better looking than a human, and an elf is like a plus 2 bonus. A half-orc is like a minus 2. And really, I would probably even give a half-orc like even more than that. Probably like almost cutting their charisma bonus in half in terms of appearance, because half-orcs are really rather ugly. Now, dwarves in my games cannot swim. I don't like the idea of a dwarf swimming. You cannot make a swim roll if you're a dwarf. You just drown if you get in water. They have stubby arms. They're creatures that are essentially, living metal. That is what a dwarf is, living metal, really, with flesh. And I don't like the idea of them swimming. I think it adds great flavor and more fear to the game if they can't swim. And I will drown a character. This is one of the things I will tell people. I don't like to cheap death my characters, but I will drown you if you can't swim and you get in the water. I will drown you. So people know. People know I haven't drowned anyone yet, but people know I'm looking for it. So people buy ranks of swim in my game because I will drown you. But dwarves get proficiency with light hammers and war hammers, the same way elves get proficiency with long swords. So if you're like a dwarf wizard, you would still know those hammers. Not axes, but hammers. I think hammers are really the personified weapon of the dwarven people. An axe is just a weapon they're using. They really aren't doing anything with axes. They aren't out there cutting down trees in most campaign settings, but they're always using hammers. So dwarfs get that bonus. Half-orcs are reworked just a little bit because they are vastly underpowered. Of the player handbook races, they are the weakest. No doubt about it. No argument to be made. They have to be given a little bit more. Now, what I give half-orcs is I use, in the previous videos described, a point system, a number of points that the character receives at the beginning level, and caps. Now, half-orcs still have the same caps. So you get first level, a half-orc's cap will be 20 strength, 16 intelligence, 16 charisma, because they have a minus 2 to charisma and intelligence. However, half-orc gets just as many points as an elf, half-elf, human, whatever, to make the character. So they're not at minus 2 points. Their caps are just lowered. They also get a plus 2 bonus to intimidate. Half-orcs are scary, and people are off-put by them, but you have to give them a bonus to intimidate. That means intimidate is always a class skill for half-orcs, regardless of class. That makes sense. Can't make a good argument against that one. Of course, you may not put more points in there. You might not be the intimidating half-orc, but there's no reason that half-orcs should not receive that. Also, for half-orcs, I'm a big fan of orcs. I really like them. And in my settings, when I make a custom setting, orcs are actually default alignment, neutral good, and they are like an agricultural sort of race. They're usually the oldest race in the world, and they receive a plus 2 bonus to profession, agriculture, farming, and brewing, winemaking. They're the great brewers of beer, of makers of wine, creators of anything to do with plants. They just have an almost mystical connection to the world in almost a druidic sort of way in the campaign world that I fashioned. But I also run Forgotten Realms, where I do not incorporate that into it because it starts tinkering with other things when you make orcs so radically different. The one thing, and I think 3.5 is a better system than Pathfinder, but I do like Pathfinder. I played it, and the one thing I liked in Pathfinder, although their power curve is a bit steep in Pathfinder, to be fair, they are the way they handle feats, giving them to you at every odd level, I like, which by 9th level means you've netted a whole extra feat for your character. There are so many feats with the OGL systems that you can never really appreciate them with the pathetic amount of feats they give you. I've even thought about maybe giving a feat every single level. I have strongly considered that. For every character, every level, you get a feat. There's just so many of them. At first level, I also give every character an extra feat of my choice. Like you know, come up with your background and everything. You get everything put together how you want, and then I'll assign an additional feat, which is also a good balancer. You know, if your character is kind of over the top powerful in certain things, I can give you a feat that doesn't that gives you bonuses elsewhere. You know, like a skill focused feat or something like that. And if someone else built their character real skill focused, I could give them a more combat oriented feat to help have a bit more balance in combat or into some other aspect. And I definitely will use feats depending on how the character's put together. Of course, I try to make sure it makes sense for them, and that's the general purpose of it. But it also helps give a bit more balance, picking that extra feat out at first level for them. I allow anyone to take. You do not have to do this, but you can take up to 2 flaws and or class feature buyouts. So say if you were playing a fighter in my game, you could remove heavy armor and medium armor. Now, you couldn't just remove medium armor because they are like a chain. So you could remove heavy armor and then medium armor. These are not off of, let me make this very clear, are not off of the fighter class. So if you try to get around it, you'd be like, okay, for second level, I'm going to grab paladins, I get those feats back. No. You never get them back. They are completely off your character, not off of your classes. Which is to say your character, like if you try to interface it, there just is nothing there to interface it. So if you want medium and heavy armor, you have to spend feats to buy those proficiencies, which you certainly can. But you're going to have to spend the feats to do it, regardless of what any class you buy in the future says. Those are off your character because you selected them. You could take medium weapons off. You could take shield proficiency off. We can work with, depending on what class it is, certain things. You could knock your skill progression back by 2 points, so you could be a rogue that had, plus 6 a level or whatever. I'm pretty open to working with exactly what you can pull off, as long as it seems a fair trade. And then I usually unearth a can of flaws, and allow people to make up flaws, as long as it doesn't seem like too underpowered. If it makes a lot of sense for my campaign. Like one of the characters in that game decided he was going to make a flaw where if he gave his word he had to do something. Well, not only seems okay, but it really made, I knew it was going to make a whole bunch of stuff easier for me. So I was like, yes, sure, you can have a feat for that, because it made my game so much easier. And if you can get your game easier for one feat, do it. Do it. That's a great trade-off for you as a game master. Absolutely do that. And I did take full advantage of that over and over again. I paid attention to when he had those. So this is to say an elf could start off my game with 3 feats plus a feat I'd given him. So an elf could have 4 feats sitting there at first level. Also, you can change up to 2 class skills. So we're going into classes now. You can change up to 2 class skills of any class you're in. So if you had fighter at first level and you don't want climb and I think swim is one of the fighter skills. You don't want climb and swim. You can take that, but every fighter level you ever have is going to have those skills off it and replace with 2 other ones. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever, if your fighter concept is like, well, I was a fighter, but he's also kind of a scholar, so he knows knowledge, religion, and knowledge history. And he wasn't like really an outdoorsy sort of guy. Okay, that's fine. Fine, I have no problem with that. It allows for more character customization. More character customization allows characters to become a little bit different. But it still keeps the class still pretty similar, because you're going to have all your class skills except for 2. Only 2 you get to change out. But if you grab a level of rogue next level, you do the same thing. You could change 2 of your class skills out. Again, it has to make sense. Like if you're like, oh, let me just slip these other 2 back in. Like, no, hold on now. But that's one of the modifications I've had. I really am heavy on concept, and I don't like to be like, okay, my concept is all about having this skill and being able to do this. It's like, oh, well, a fighter can't have that skill, so now you're at cross-class, and you barely get any skill points. And I really like to minimize people having to buy cross-class skills. I think cross-class skills are really more for the things you're only going to have 1 or 2 ranks in anyway. Maybe you really need to learn how to swim, and it's not a class skill. So okay, I learned it. Maybe you really want to learn how to ride. So if you learn it, you've sacrificed your extra point to get that 1 point of ride. I think that's okay. But I don't want you like your main skill to like be halved, because you have the wrong class for that skill. That just sucks. That's not fun. And that's really the main aim of my house rules, to help make the game a bit more fun for players. And you get more freedom you give a player, the more fun they're going to have. But, some players are going to be ridiculous and abuse that. So you have to, it's a balancing game, really, running a game and making those adjudications. Now, actually, I think I'm going to go into classes more specifically. I'm just going to run down everything I have here. There are no XP penalties in my game, period. If your multi-classes get out of whack, I don't care. Nothing will drain you. No monsters have... Well, they will drain you. They'll drain the hell out of your stats. They will not drain your levels. There was no level drain in my ability. There are no spells that restore it. Being raised from the dead does not drain levels. Nothing drains levels in my game. If you create a magic item, you do not spend experience points for it. I'll talk about that a little bit later. The only thing you can use your experience points on to lower them is if you are playing something with a level adjustment and you want to buy the level adjustment off at the levels per allowed by that in the Unearthed Arcana rules. It's the only way your experience point total can ever be lowered, other than you really fucking pissing me off and getting a total sum at the end of the night of negative experience points. I've never actually given someone a total that equaled out to negative. People will get negative experience points for talking on their phones or, talking out of character, things like that. But it's just, they're still going to net. I mean, they're still going to net a bonus. But I guess theoretically you could be so bad. And I had one guy that I thought might end up with some negatives. His guy's name was Michael. He was just horrible. God, horrible player. So in my notes, I guess we'll begin with magic items right now. Magic items, I hated. I forgot to put this in my Adventure and Dragons one too. So, Brian, this is for you. I hate losing Constitution to make magic items. Doesn't make any sense to me. There would be none in the world. You know how many magic swords would be made? None. No wizards would make them. They'd be like, no, magic swords aren't possible to make, King. It's not possible. The wizards would just tell kings that because they're not going to lose their Constitution, their very life force to make a damn sword for the king. Fuck him. Maybe there'd be wands and there would be, other wizardy type things, but that just doesn't make any sense. And losing experience points to make a magic item makes no sense at all. You would gain experience. That's a huge life experience. I have created a magic item. Somehow I have become less for it. You can make a really weak argument there. I know it. I see it. I've heard it. It sucks. You should and do in my world gain experience for making a magic item. In fact, I think you did gain experience in 2nd edition. So, that was a little degree of continuity there. I guess they decided Constitution loss was too much, but experience loss, something. I don't make you lose stuff, man. You buy a damn feat, you make the magic item. Hey, that's good with me. However, there's that little catch at the end. You can't just crank out magic items in my game. Magic items require vast sums of material components, and there's always a chance factor. Particularly if you are just trying to make something, you do not have scripture and scrolls of you acquire the dragon's heart, keep it still beating, and mix it with the tears of a nymph, and the ash of a vampire, and the fangs of a gnoll, and a cicada plucked on Midsummer's Night's Eve, and take all of this and prepare it precisely at 3 a.m. in a cauldron of cold ice. Then pour this liquid over the sword while chanting the ancient words and imbibing it with properties of magic. That sort of thing is a lot better than, you have to spell the spell with a masterwork sword. Boy, that's stupid. That's just a horrible idea. Bad 3X. That's one of the things I don't like. Sometimes they strip the flavor out. It's all about the flavor, man. So I make you go through and acquire all kinds of spell components. So casters in my game do the kind of things that I think casters should do. Like those old paintings you saw in the books or the 2nd edition, and even some of the 3rd edition stuff has this. They have the dragon skull and all these bizarre components everywhere that aren't components for spells. What the hell are they doing with vampire ash? Tell you what they're doing with it. They're trying to make magic items. Also, if you have really cool components and you throw it out on a spell, like if a spell needs, chill touch needs like grave dirt, and you throw out some vampire ash instead, I'm gonna give you like a little bonus. At least make like a roll for it, or something to give you some sort of bonus. Now, in having the special components you put together for the item, coming up with a cool way, making it really role playing it out, and giving this great description of how you're creating the item and all that, man, that's a lot more fun for the characters. I think a lot more pride in the items. I guarantee you do it that way. That's the better way to do it. Here's one of the bad things about the other way I get the Master Sword and I cast these spells. And you know what they do? They throw that sword away, man. Make magic items cool, and your players will not reduce them to stats. If no, that's my sword. Here's the +5. No. Care about that sword. This sword has history and legacy and story. I made it, or they've acquired it and won it in a very interesting quest or way. And the item has meaning to them. It's all about making your magic items mean something. And this makes the magic items they create mean something. It also slows down that production line, which just doesn't make any sense. Magic items should be rare, mystical, and really mean something. And they do mean something to players when they make them like that. I also make them make spellcraft and knowledge arcana, and sometimes knowledge religion or knowledge of planes, depending exactly what they're trying to do. I make them make several rolls, and then we start going through, and it all depends on what they're doing. It might be 3 rolls, it might be 7 rolls, and these rolls are going to make some determinants to how powerful the item can be. They might screw some things up and make the item weaker. They might, in some of the rolls, the item might have some additional properties, and particularly if you've taken, these parts of Magical Beast, they can be used to, add some extra things there that maybe the spell itself doesn't. Maybe you killed the Winter Wolf and you're using, his brain stem as part of the liquid you're inscribing into the metal that you're forging of this sword. And maybe this sword now gives you a DR bonus, an energy resistance bonus of 5 to cold or 10 to cold, or maybe you're even immune to cold. If you rolled particularly well in that aspect, you bam, drop that natural 20, and you had a big bonus anyway. You hit like a 30, a 40, something like that. I went, okay, and then I'll describe everything, and then you have to go through. Maybe you cast your Identify and you unlock as you're running around, you unlock all the principles of that particular magic item, and really it gives you a wonderful intense scene if you push it and you get that player to push it. They will appreciate that, will respect that, and other players will enjoy that as well. Any of the classes that have a full base attack bonus, or the monk, so just say the warrior classes, they all get a free exotic weapon proficiency feat. I think exotic weapon proficiency feat is, well, it kind of sucks. Like that's a lot. You don't get a lot for a feat. I think you should get more for a feat than that. I'm going to go over a few of the changes I made to some of the classes. I talk about, I think in one of my videos, I talk about how wizards and how everyone who casts spontaneously. I don't like the Vancian magic system at all. Everyone who casts spontaneously. So, classes that already cast spontaneously, boy, they got fucked in my game, didn't they? Well, no, because I do some other things with them. But, let me just talk about that. Wizards are pretty similar to the way wizards are, except that they do not automatically gain spells. I think that's one of the stupidest rules I've ever seen. You have to earn your spells. You have to go out and buy magic scrolls, find magic scrolls, take enemy spell books and pray that they're not trapped or that you can defuse the trap. I've had wizards die, from traps and spell books. Tell that story one day. That was actually very funny. So wizards have a huge advantage over sorcerers there in being able to cast them, but they don't get those spells automatically. Priests and druids have to learn spells the same way wizards do. They do not get all their spells automatically. They just don't get them. Another, I guess you might say, disadvantage they have, whenever you cast a spell for the first time in my game, they give you experience points for that. However, you have to actually cast it, and you have to keep a little notebook with you and write down the verbal, somatic material for all of your spells. Keep your material components on you all the time. And Brian actually I think it was Brian, that gave me a pretty good idea, sort of using more of a foci sort of system for spells. And I kind of think I might go for that, but expand a little bit more than he did, instead of just being, okay, one thing for levels. Be like one thing per level, per school, per sphere. So you have more than just a few things on you, but not as many as with this system. I think I'm going to kind of take that under advisement for the material components. But I do demand that if you cast spells, you do actually cast them. If you go, oh, I don't know, well, your spell doesn't work. And if you fumble around, I will. That's another thing I do. I use that time segments. If you go, oh, I don't know, my character, all right, what are you doing? You're sitting there going, I don't know. We're going to keep going, and maybe by next turn you can get something. Also, if you're outside, if you were not paying attention, if you were off on the cell phone, if you're outside smoking, or whatever you're doing, and it's your turn, we roll past you, and you stand there flat-footed. I have no patience for that, and I also can really screw you. If you are unconscious and you go off, and they revive you, you're standing there flat-footed. Of course, players usually one another will run and try to grab the person. Get up! They're going to kill you if you don't get back in the room immediately. I interject a lot of the stuff for paladins, a lot of the fluff from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition stuff with the Holy Sword and such. Everyone gets cool stuff when you get something. For example, paladins, warhorses, familiars, animal companions. I make that stuff cool. You're not getting a damn warhorse. I would if I'm playing a paladin in this game, like, here's your warhorse. I'd be like, oh, worst game ever. For me, I'm gonna give you something cool, man. You might get a cockatrice out of Golden Axe, which I haven't given you away yet because I've covered that for myself. And I've thrown hints out. I think that you remember that cockatrice, the first thing you could ride in Golden Axe, the pink thing with the big beak, the whip tail. I really want that. A Griffin. I've given players Griffins, Pegasus, the like Schlipnir type, 8-legged horses from Norse mythology, Nightmares. Not Nightmares, just one. Familiars. I've given out Quasits, Imps. I don't know if I've actually ever given out a Quasit. I don't know if I've had a Chaotic Wizard. I might have. I think I've had Pseudo Dragons, Mephits, all sorts of different things to wizards. And I'm particularly generous there for familiars, for sorcerers. For animal companions, I might give you you'd be like, oh, I want a hawk. Well, here's your huge size giant hawk, or your large size giant hawk that you can ride around. I'm not just going to give you some little whack booty thing. I think that really diminishes it. But you might not get it right away, and particularly for your paladin, you're going to have to quest for that. There's going to have to be a real cool epic quest that you're going to have to do, and it's going to be hard. And one character got a nightmare. Like, the nightmare was just eating people. Like, he had to go through a long series. It was very frustrating to him to break the nightmare. It wasn't just okay, I've broken it. Now we're just straight. No. It was, he got it to the point he could ride it, and it is still, I think it was eating his servants and stuff like that. So I was trying to get my mind on stuff. I think, just a raven is not very familiar. Not very familiar. It's not really what a familiar was either. It's not just an animal. No, it was like a demon, dude, or a spirit, or however you want to look at it. But it wasn't just an animal. So I like to give more on that. The druids do not ever get scimitars in my game. That makes no sense. If anyone could tell me why anyone thinks druids should have scimitars, a Middle Eastern weapon for a Celtic, British Isles religion, I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me. So druids do not get scimitars in my game ever. You can pretty much have carte blanche to really rechange around your weapons as a druid, as long as they make some degree of sense to me. That's straight with me. I usually kind of want a 1-for-1. Okay, you get this many slots for weapons, fill them out however you want. Clerics, I am so flexible with. I love the way AD&D did to make every cleric, especially priest, make them different. I am very flexible when people play clerics, more so than any other class. I love clerics, and I make them very, very flexible. Also, if you're playing the cleric class at 7th and 14th and 20th level, you get an extra domain from your god, as a little incentive not to immediately prestige class out of cleric, because cleric and sorcerer, the way they're written, you should always immediately prestige out of them, because the classes are completely dead after first level. So at least gives a small reason not to do that. Sorcerers in my game get D6s instead of D4s for hit points. they do not cast spells. They have spell-like abilities instead of spells. Sorcerers should have spell-like abilities the way that they describe what they're doing. They are not casting spells. They have spell-like abilities. Sorcerers have to be thematic. It has to make sense. You know, I don't. You might be able to come up with a good reason why you have like Charm Person and Fireball, for example. You know, because of your demonic ancestry. But I want to see there being a correlation. Things need to make sense for the spells you get. Also, for anyone who is a spontaneous caster, they have that same limit of spells. However, I also give you, you know, if you have a bonus from your stat like Sorcerer's Charisma, I will give you that bonus also to an extra spell, you know, per whatever your bonus would give you. Not just an extra spell to cast, but also an extra spell to know. Again, those are spell-like abilities, and I do use not the newer. I use, I guess, the 3.0 Book of Vile Darkness. I love that. That's one of, if maybe my favorite book. That's not a core book, and it's a tough one. It is a tough one to say, but I love that book. And I will let you use the feats out of there for spell-like abilities, which can really up you intensely in power level, which makes a sorcerer much better, because sorcerer otherwise just will never be picked. Sorcerers also get feats at every even level, second, fourth, whatever. Another reason not to just jump right on sorcerer. But it's a feat. It's kind of weird. It's not a feat that you get to pick. It's a I choose. I call them legacies, or bloodlines, or you know, whatever. I should come up with legacies now, so I'm calling them legacies now. I don't know. Maybe I've said that before, but you get that, and you know, I try to give you out different powers that come along with your bloodline, making it make sense. Now, you could work out your bloodline. I might work it out. You might kind of halfway work it out. And we fill the pieces in, but that's an extra advantage they get. Bard's abilities are also spell-like abilities, and sorcerers can also cast spells in padded armor. They take no penalty for doing it, but they do not get light armor. They don't have padded armor as a proficiency. You can buy this. You can buy the feat to get that, or if you grabbed another class, you could acquire that. And the same thing with bards. You know, I think your spells need to be themed. I do not let sorcerers cast off of scrolls. Scroll means no more to sorcerer than anyone else. I do allow sorcerers. I give sorcerers use magic device for free as a free skill as well, but they can't cast off scrolls. They can use magic device and try to cast off scrolls, but they're not spell users. Bards, however, can use scrolls from anyone. They can use any kind of scroll. Whether they can use, because bards are the masters of the written word, they can use scrolls from any class. And I even have sort of like druid scrolls, but I usually make them different, like little, Nordic style rune carvings or something like that, because druids, again, have to learn spells. And part of the reason I initially started doing that, not just giving you all the spells for a cleric, is it's daunting. Here's every first level spell. Write out spell descriptions for them. I just give you several that are thematic. And I'm real big on gods not granting certain spells. I am a believer that inflict spells are negative energy. I think that certain gods would not grant those. So they don't. Certain gods would not grant Raise Dead. They're like, nope, not going to grant that one. And there's spells that certain gods probably wouldn't be able to grant. You know, if we look at mythology, there were just certain gods that could do things and certain gods that couldn't do other things. So why not bring that into games a bit more? I give all rogues a +1 luck bonus to any roll. It's except for damage rolls. You add this bonus in after you've made the roll. So if you miss a saving throw by 1, you're like, oh, we did put that luck bonus in there, and I'm not disintegrated. You only get it once per game session. So, very rarely does it ever even used. They're like, I want to hold this. And the other advantage I give them is you can pick one of your weapons from your list and trade it off for another weapon of equal or lesser value. Like you have an exotic weapon and a hand crossbow. If you don't want to have hand crossbow and you're like, man, I really don't like her to have a whip, take a whip. You want a scourge, take a scourge. If you want to take, I think you have like short swords. If you want to trade that short sword in for like a hand axe, and they might even have hand axe on the list. I don't have a list in front of me, but whatever, you get that point. Specialist wizards, I do not really like the wizard class. I like to have specialist wizards, and I give a lot of leeway to specialist wizards. I have an extra stat for each of them, and I let you, kind of decide which of your, because there's like several things, for a wizard that are keyed off of their stats. What level you can cast, what your saving throws are, made against. So each of them, like for Evoker, it's Constitution. All of them still have intelligence, but Evoker also needs a good Constitution because he's so heavily pulling off of himself. Illusionist needs a good Dexterity. This only makes sense. An Enchanter needs Charisma. Divination, Necromancy, Abjuration, and Transmutation all need Wisdom, which is good. I think Wisdom can often be kind of downplayed a little bit. It wasn't given quite enough in the edition, so it throws a little extra to Wisdom there. And Charisma, of course, for Conjurers. Obviously, that makes sense. You can also take an additional school off. Say, example, all of them have one. I'll have two band. You have to choose two band schools, and Diviners only choose one band school, and you can't choose Divination as a band school. But when you go through them, you another thing I give them, they all get the saving throws from that school. Your school of choice are made at +1 difficulty, so you get an additional bonus besides the feats that go in to help you. You're already mastering that particular school by being a member of that. And if you take an additional school beyond what you're supposed to have and trim it off, say, now you're an Invoker that cannot cast from 3 schools, that school, you can use that extra school to give you extra advantages, like giving you more skill points per level, giving you, if you trim enough of them off, I'll give you could have a higher base attack bonus, more hit points, extra feat placement per level, extra class skills, all sorts of different things. And I allow class skill. I actually completely wrote up classes for each of them, but I allow a lot of class skill changing. A Necromancer probably needs different skills than the average wizard does, as does let's see here. As there's probably a Diviner and certainly an Illusionist. An Illusionist needs Escape Artist, needs Tumble, needs Sleight of Hand. But he doesn't have those class skills. That's a problem. So, those things need to be fixed up. They did a very, very poor job with the way they handled that. I don't know why. How they slipped on 8 entire classes if they had published them all, individually as classes in the Player's Handbook 2, for example. I know they could have gotten a ton of mileage out of them, tweaking them around and such. But they didn't. The very first house rule I made, before I ever even ran 3.0, I saw that you had to confirm criticals. I said, not on a 20 you don't. Not on a 20 you don't. I also use a critical hit table that is rather horrifying, and a critical fumble table for 1s. You roll a 1, you always miss. You roll a 20, you always hit. There's no... If you have a threat range weapon, you roll to confirm, and you do not go to the crit table. You just do whatever your weapon does on that. So those are minor crits. You can get a big time crit on the crit table, and it always hits as well at 20. Skills. There's some feats that I have changed around. I'm not going to go into what those are. Like some of the really pathetic ones, like dodge. Like you get a +1 dodge bonus to everyone. That was just annoying to keep track of, and it's just a really pathetically weak feat. Even if it's like a prereq, it's still too damn weak. Skills. I've added 2 to the trained only list. If you do not know how to ride, you cannot make ride checks. You can try to ride a horse and you might be okay on it, but as soon as something goes bad, you can't make ride checks. People that are really good at riding horses fall off them and die. You don't know what you're doing, and you're carrying around lots and lots of luggage in the form of adventuring gear. You'll just fall off. Not to say you're going to fall off and die, but you're going to fall off the horse eventually. and swim. I will drown your ass. If you don't know how to swim in real life, you don't know how to swim in real life. You sure as hell better not go jump in a lake in Plate Mail. One of my father's friends when I was 14, drowned trying to teach himself how to swim. You do not know how to swim, you will drown. That is how it happens. That's why swimming is, water's terrifying to a lot of people, particularly in ages past, where we didn't have YMCA's and other means by teaching people. Any skill you do not have any ranks in that is not trained, trained only, you are at a -1 penalty. Say, if you don't have any ranks of spot and you need to make a spot roll, -1. Sense motive roll, no ranks sense motive, -1. I have upped the amount of skills that synergy into other skills. I'm not going to go through that whole list, but I also will tell you at 12 ranks, if you have a skill that synergies, it gives you a +2 bonus. At 5 ranks, at 12 ranks, it'll give you an additional +1 bonus, and at 20 ranks, it'll give you an extra +1 bonus to that. So say a total of +3 or +4 bonus from that skill synergy. I don't see any reason it shouldn't keep going up and keep giving you that better bonus. It just doesn't really make any sense. So I changed that. I will be introducing speed factor the next time I run 3.5. I'm currently running Mutants and Masterminds. But the next time I run 3.5, I'm going to be introducing speed factor almost exactly as it's done, or perhaps exactly as it's done as AD&D 2nd edition. I'm also going to be changing around what armor does for you. I'm going to be using the rules out of the D20 product Conan for armor piercing and adding armor piercing value to weapons. So this really gives weapons a lot now in my game. You're going to have everything you have in 3.5 plus a speed factor plus an armor piercing value. So there's going to be some additional categories in there. And armor basically works like damage reduction in Conan, but weapons bypass it. So, some weapons don't bypass it well, and so it gives you an extra level. Like there's some weapons that don't do very much damage, but they just slice right through armor, so you're still taking that full amount of damage against your nugget. Let's see here. I don't use any magic items that change gender. They're stupid. You should not use them. It's just an uncomfortable and immature aspect of the game that teenagers apparently like. I don't like it. I don't like it. It has no place in a serious game. Now, like I said, undead that drain levels from you, they just drain con or maybe something else. Some of them don't even drain. Like vampires, they don't drain anything off you. If they drink your blood, you just get it back eventually. I might give some penalty there, but I handle vampires a lot. Vampires are almost completely changed the way I handle them in the game. Of course, I run vampire for years, and I know vampire is in and out. I understand different ways to do that. I'm also pretty flexible with allowing other races into the game for player characters. However, I pretty much have a limit of one. Like, there's going to be one weird thing in a game. I did run one Forgotten Realms game where there were two things that were just barely weird. Like, there was an Aasimar, which just looks like a really awesome person. Until eventually he got wings at 9th level. But just looks like this really amazing person. And there was a guy who wanted to be a quarter ogre. So he was just a really ugly person. He was a quarter ogre. He was like 6'5" or something like that. He wasn't a large size creature or anything. But he was 1/4 ogre, which, of course, if you can be half of something, obviously you can be a quarter of something. So he's like a, 335, 6'5", something like that. And he would wrestle people. And why wouldn't you wrestle someone? But we had both of those, which was sort of, further along than I normally go. But both of them were just, it's just barely really anything on either one of them. So I allowed that, but usually my rule is one weird thing per party. And I like to have a weird thing in a party. I also like to have a human. I like to have a human and a weird thing in a party because in a book, you always have a human, and you damn near always have a weird thing, It's dragon bait or Chewbacca or whatever it is. There's a damn weird thing in the party. So I don't have a problem with a weird thing. Now, I don't go crazy with just ridiculous bullshit. And a game where you have 6 monsters running around, I've never seen one that wasn't utter trash. But some of the races I think that are acceptable, plain touched hobgoblins, love hobgoblins, huge hobgoblin fan. Half ogres lizardmen, goblins, kobolds, bugbears, orcs, and other things like that. Particularly the things that don't have big ECL. I think gnolls are a big problem because they're just so freaking irredeemable. Of all the monstrous humanoids, they're the ones in my game that are pretty much the most evil, and they have like the worst reputation. Not to say that people won't be racist against some of the others, as they will, and why shouldn't they be? Let's see. I never make anyone roll for arbitrary things that they don't want to roll for, like their height or weight or age. That's just on you. You decide what you want to do, and it's straight. I also do not use penalties for slightly off weapons, because having the slightly off weapons, first of all, it kind of makes sense. Like Sting wasn't, and Hobbit wasn't designed for a Hobbit. At least I don't think it was. I think it was just designed for like a dude, and the Hobbit just picks it up, and it's just a larger item than it should be in his hand. So if you're playing a halfling or a gnome, particularly later levels, you get jacked, man, in terms of treasure, because you just can't pick up and wheel most of this stuff under those rules. You're taking a penalty, it's other sizes, and it's just a problem because you're not going to refine into much small-made gear. And if you're not allowing players to purchase items that they desire, they're going to kind of frustrate. Like, man, there's no treasure for me again. There's no treasure for me again. There's no treasure for me again. Man, I mean, they certainly could find that +2 club in the Kobold Cave and a +1 dagger from the goblins. But they're not that. There are way more treasure opportunities off medium-sized and large-sized creatures. Also, you get the cool thing of the barbarian running around with an ogre's longsword he's using for his two-handed sword, or an ogre's battle axe he's using for his great axe near the hand. So I find players, I don't know, it's a place that I see doesn't need to have a jack, that they put a jack in there. So I took it out for having some more fun there. So to basically say, a halfling could take a short sword in my game, which is like a light weapon, and it just moves up a size category to a normal size weapon. What do they call those? And I would know, but it's like 3 a.m. here. Use that, in that size category, and as long as it doesn't exceed, as long as it's not above whatever large size is, above whatever two-handed size is for that size, I allow them to use that without a penalty. And my spotlight rule, I do not favor whoever. There's certain things, like if you're like, okay, I'm going to be a big battle axe swinging dude, and someone else, I'm like, okay, your character's a battle axe guy, great. Someone else is like, yeah, I really want to use the battle axe. I'm like, but yeah, because the other character's already done. I don't have people making characters in time. But whoever gets to me first, man, you're going to get the thing. Or if I come up with an idea, like, down the road, I'm going to use a blade boot for this character. I'm going to really work that blade boot in there. It's their weapon. I got a great deal. And someone else later's like, yeah, I want to get a blade boot for my other weapon. Because I'm real big on spotlighting people. And there's a lot of ways to do that. One of the most fundamental ways is to kind of make sure that people aren't weapons overlapping. If you have 3 fighters, that's fine. But make them different, different armor, different weapons, and, they can still come out pretty well the same. So, no idea how long this is. I know it's going to be a long one. So if you got to this point, thanks. I hope that some of these rules are helpful to you. And if there are some that you particularly thought were interesting, I would like to hear a comment below if you're like, I really like to use that rule. Let me know which one, and if you find some of these don't work, let me know, and, there might be a reason from the implementation it's not working well, or it might be interesting, for me to get more additional experimentation and feedback with the ideas, and see the real level of validity to them. And if some of them, if I didn't explain it well enough, please ask me, and I'll go over it more. And if you think some of them are stupid, let me know that too, and I'll explain why they are not, and you're stupid. No, I'm just kidding. So thanks for watching, guys.